welcome to MORE-VILLE, ORVILLE, the podcast that reviews every episode of the ORVILLE. I'm your co-host, Michael, and I'm joined by G.I. Jolie.
That's me.
Woo, yes, and Champ Ian.
Michael, G.I. Jolie, it is a privilege to be here with you this afternoon.
Oh, stop.
The privilege is all ours. We are here at the season finale of the podcast and of the show. They kind of line up. We're here to talk about the episode of the ORVILLE called The Road Not Taken, which is kind of a part two, but they didn't call it a part two, which I like because it came as a surprise, right? And Champ Ian is going to tell us what happens in this episode.
I am. This was a great episode. I really enjoyed it. This episode starts off with a very cold open as two mysterious figures walk through the snow towards a towards a Union communications outpost. And they're rifling through the equipment there. They take away some sort of ostensibly some sort of communications gear, and they bring it back to a Union shuttle that has a registry number that we haven't recognized before, so we don't know who these people are yet. But then they take off their masks, and it is it's Ed and Gordon, and they're looking a little bit worse for wear. And they take this piece of fancy equipment into the shuttle, and we realize that it's actually a microwave of some description, and they're hungry, and Gordon wants a Twinkie. They haven't had a good meal in a long time. So what's going on here? How come our disheveled heroes are hungry and starving and on a shuttlecraft that we haven't seen before? They fly off into space, and they're pursued by a couple of Kalon. And oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm backing up a little bit here. Is this the part where we learn that the Kalon's heads detach? And they can fly and attack people? Yeah, I think they're chased through the ice planet by the detached Kalon heads first, and then back onto the shuttle.
Right.
So they fly off, and they're trying to escape this Kalon attack, and they fly into an ice moon to try and lose them, and they collapse the entrance to the moon, or the ice planet, and they crush the Kalon. They fly back out, and they're finally able to get to hyperspace. And as they're flying away, our heroes are stopped by a giant, what do they call it? It's a tractor beam, but it's a scavenger ship, they call it. And they're really worried that these scavengers are going to peel their skin off and wear them as suits.
It's what they always do.
Yes, reavers aren't men. So,
Yes!
So, as they're sucked up into this scavenger ship by a tractor beam, they're readying their weapons. The door opens and they're ready to fight their way out. But it is Kelly and some of the other crew of the ORVILLE. But they don't look like Kelly and the rest of the crew of the ORVILLE. They look equally disheveled, like we don't... It's just some sort of weird timeline. Kelly introduces herself. Hey, Ed, how are you doing? Ed recognizes her as this girl that he went on a date with 7 years prior and turned him down for a second. But it happens to be the Kelly from our previous episode, the Kelly who went back in time after being yanked forward in time by the anti-banana ray. And Kelly, it turns out, was unsuccessful in having her memory wiped. And at the end of the last season, she turned Ed down because she knew what was going to happen. As a result, she didn't get him the captaincy of the ORVILLE, and as a result, Dr. Finn wasn't aboard his crew. As a result of that, Isaac didn't befriend her kids. They couldn't convince him to turn against his people, and the Kalon won the war, and they have destroyed most of the Union. Now, the plan is that they have to take Kelly back, or they have to send Claire back to re-attempt the memory wipe. But Kelly is missing some sort of a protein in her brain, so they have to find this special protein, but there aren't any Union sick bays anywhere because they've all been destroyed. They find a resistance base where we meet up with our old friend Catan.
Yes.
Who is a resistance fighter. and she's there with Yaphet. They synthesize this protein, and they fight off a Kalon attack to give Ed and company enough time to escape. So now they have this protein. All they need is the Aronoff device, the banana ray. Mm-hmm. Now, that is still on the ORVILLE. Now, when the Kalon won that battle, the ORVILLE wasn't destroyed. It crash landed on Earth and is now in the middle of the Pacific Ocean at the bottom of the sea. So they fly down with the shuttle, and they find the ORVILLE intact, 7 miles down. They board it, and they find that there's a life sign on board. And it's Bortus, who has been living there by himself for a year or so, with minimal life support, existing only on combat rations. So they get to the ORVILLE back up into space. They have the Aronoff device, but they don't have all the information they need to send Dr. Finn back. They need to communicate with the Kalon collective intelligence, which gives away their position. Once they hack into Isaac's brain from their remote workstation, they are able to download his intelligence. The Kalon discover them, and they have just enough time to send Dr. Finn back in time, where she injects Kelly with the protein that she needs, and they wipe her memory. And Ed asks her out again, and this time she says yes.
The end.
The end.
And I believe because it's been a while since we rewatched it, but don't they flash back to the correct timeline at the end? Am I right about that?
I don't believe they do. I think the episode ends with Kelly accepting the date.
Gotcha. Okay.
We just go right to the end credits.
So so the first thing that struck me when you were giving your recap is the cold open. That cold open is so cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, this is not part 2. This is just a new episode, which I think it's better to do it this way. You just start off so that you have no idea where you are. You can't get your bearings, and you have to figure it out as you go along. I love that,
Mm-hmm. Dishing out the information as we need it.
Exactly.
And we have to figure this out.
And yeah, basically, this was like ORVILLE the movie to me. Like, these 2 episodes were so epic, they could have been on the big screen. So obviously, I loved it. G.I. Jolie, what about you?
Yeah, and like it gives you more room when you do a cold open like that. It gives you more room for more action. If you noticed, it was pointed out to me by several other little sources that I furiously read because I really miss the ORVILLE, is that there was no opening credits, which they got rid of in order to add more additional scenes.
I think I read
that. Yes, there's no credits. You're right.
Yeah, so it gives you a little more runtime, which gives you a little more story, which gives me a little more ORVILLE.
Mm-hmm.
MORE-VILLE, ORVILLE, you could say. But yeah, I remember first watching this episode and thinking like I didn't really like it. The whole like a whole time travel thing. I think we talked about it in the last episode where like the conventions of time travel are kind of there's different conventions of time travel, and they're kind of messing with 2 separate ones. And how do we know this isn't going to work, and how do we know that isn't going to work? And they assumed one thing was going to work, and then it didn't, and then they explain it away very conveniently. The idea, like, why didn't the memory wipe work? It's like, oh, this thing that she doesn't have in her system, that the doctor just happens to be aware of, beta secretas or something like that. Kelly doesn't have it, so she's not susceptible to memory wipes.
Well, at that point, I'm gonna give the episode a bit of a pass.
Yeah, okay.
Because you have to get here somehow.
Yeah.
And for her to be missing something in her brain that affected a procedure on her brain, okay, I'll give it that.
Okay.
I'll give it that. And I'll even give these weird little idiosyncrasies of time travel. I'll give that a pass too, right? The fact that it looked like it worked last time because they were all still there. But we really didn't see the outcome last episode. We just saw her get sent back.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't see what happened on the Orville after they sent her back. And now we did.
Yeah. I like that. I like that there's like because Kelly didn't become because Kelly and Ed didn't get married, didn't get divorced, he didn't become the captain of a starship. Isaac never formed a relationship with Claire, so the Kaylon, you know what I mean? Like, Isaac never betrayed the Kaylon for Claire and the rest of the crew, so obviously the Kaylon won. Like, and that is really
all those
awesome.
all those dominoes were very plausible. Each one of those things would have led to the other.
Yeah, and I liked how they explained that really effectively. And like, to think that this happened in a matter of 7 years, like, that's kind of scary. They're already like Mad Maxing it through the galaxy so that they can like, honestly, it's like, it's kind of like, you mentioned Reavers before, but they're like scavengers in the Firefly universe looking for replicators to make Twinkies.
Yeah.
I mean, what else would you be doing, right?
I forgot about the Twinkie thing. Yeah, we should also mention that for the first time since she left the show, we get to see Catan. I wish you could have seen more of her, but that's fine. Now, am I imagining it, or do they imply that she had a relationship with Lamar?
I feel that was implied. I got that sense.
Right. It would be cool.
She dated practically everybody on the ship in the other timeline. I'm honestly surprised they didn't try to like pair the. Well, do you know what? Now that I know that there's probably history between Seth MacFarlane and Halston Sage, is like, I'm not surprised that he didn't try to pair her up with somebody else on the crew, because that just wouldn't have been fine for him.
He would have been jealous.
Yes, all the time. Maybe that's why he has been relegated to engineering and she's been cast asunder.
You know what's funny is when I think about this episode in my head, so much happened. Like, for example, finding Bortus in the Orville at the bottom of the ocean. What a great idea.
Yeah.
They could have dragged this out for at least another episode, right? Like, they could have spent so much time piecing together the different, almost like the Magnificent Seven, right? Like gathering up the crew. But it was just nice that they compacted it all into one episode, because it was, like I said, it was like an epic. It was like the Orville, the movie, right? So I thought it was great. I really like what they did with it.
I wonder if we'll ever revisit this timeline too, because you have some mirror implications here. I mean, I don't know if it's a place where they can go back to, but
that's a good point.
Now that we've sort of established this alternate reality,
why not? Speaking of, I just want to quickly point out, we usually reference Star Trek on the show, and I did mention how Next Generation, they made it a point of avoiding using a lot of the old classic tropes, and one of the things they never used was mirror mirror. However, DS9 did, and I'm watching DS9 for the first time all the way through now, and they were already on their second mirror follow-up. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, that would be nice for the Orville to do the same thing. Why not, right? Like, maybe bring back a character from that timeline into our timeline, but not realize it until halfway through the episode. You know, like they're an evil duplicate, but you don't know until they pull something on our heroes or something. So
that would be fun.
Right? Which is a trope that we've seen used in other shows, but I don't want to spoil those shows, because then you'll see those twists coming. So I can't even mention what show it is. But anyway, okay, so for the season finale, it was a bit of a serious episode. So unfortunately, I only have one joke recorded. Would you guys like to hear what it is?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. Okay. Here it is.
Really? What? We almost got killed getting this thing, and you're having a Twinkie? I wanted a Twinkie. You want half? Yes, I want half.
That was great.
I like that. I like that scene. because I as I'm watching them steal this piece of equipment, I'm thinking this is some sort of fancy piece of equipment. It just happens to look like a microwave. And for them to get it back to the shuttle and, it's a microwave and they're going to eat a Twinkie. I don't know. It made me chuckle a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this episode was not loaded with laughs, but I mean, what do you expect? It's in like a dystopian timeline, right? So
There was another line that made me chuckle. I think it was when Kelly in this new universe was talking to Ed about how he was the captain at some point. And he was just, I was the captain? I had to wear a shirt when I was swimming until I was 20.
yes, that was a good one.
Oh yeah, she was like, it was great because he's like, wait. She's like, yeah, this didn't happen because you stopped the Kalon. He's like, what? Yeah, you stopped the Kalon. I stopped the Kalon. Yeah, as the captain of the ship. I was the captain of the ship. Yeah. What? And then he gives a line about the, okay, because I had to wear a shirt in the pool till I was 12.
Uh-huh.
He was just like, I wrote that one down because I thought it was hilarious as well.
But it's just like this sort of self-deprecating, like he can't possibly believe that he had anything to do with anything good for humanity.
Well, that's one of those, It's a Wonderful Life moments where, the character doesn't realize how important they are until they take themselves out of that timeline, right?
And just to cycle back onto that Twinkie joke, like, he finally shares the Twinkie with Ed, and they both take a bite at the same time, and both of the reactions are the same. I don't know about you, but like I eat a Twinkie the exact same way, where you bite into it and you're like,
Like the delayed
for like
reaction.
5 minutes. Ooh, this is so good, and then like you immediately regret it because it tastes really sweet and it like upsets your stomach.
That's me every time I have a Boston cream donut. It's always the one I go for, but halfway through I'm like, oh God, why did I do this?
This was a mistake.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm trying to cut down on carbs. You want to lay off the Boston cream donuts? I'm getting hungry just thinking about this now.
Coconut
References.
milk. So delicious. I actually want a glass of coconut milk now. But no, it's just such a weird thing that they would replicate a Twinkie of all things. Like, you think, because we always see them like, you think that like stressful activity, maybe they would go for like Chilean tequila. I don't know.
Okay. Well, here's a question: is there anything they could have done? I mean, here's the thing. Usually, in an episode like this in another show, because that we're never going to see these characters again, they usually go overboard with things they can't get away with in a regular episode. So, for example, in the very first Mirror Mirror episode of Star Trek, I believe in one episode, Chekhov gets killed, Sulu gets killed. Am I wrong about that? At least one or two of them.
I think you're wrong about that.
I think
Chekhov,
one of them.
Chekhov gets put into the whatever the machine is called.
Okay.
And he screams in pain for a while, but Kirk is good Kirk and doesn't order him killed.
Okay.
Right? He's asked, "So have you ordered full duration?" "No, I haven't decided." And he just kind of leaves that hanging. I'm not sure about Sulu.
I do remember that on the Mirror Mirror Enterprise, the way that you get promoted is through assassination, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I believe one of the crew members assassinates another. It's probably just a nobody. But I guess what I'm thinking is, as great as this episode was, what if it was even more? What if there was more tragedy? Like, what if we saw Catan get killed and then Bortus get killed, just so it could be even more of a dystopian alternative?
Did Catan not get killed?
No.
No?
If she did, they didn't show it, because I believe her base got attacked, but I don't think they showed her dying, did they?
I'm not sure if they did or not. I don't recall. But
Yeah.
it's heavily implied that they were fighting
Okay.
basically a hopeless cause just to buy Ed and the crew time to escape.
Okay. I guess they should have just maybe hit us over the head more a little bit and just showed how bad things would have been if things went this way. I thought that would have been a little bit cooler to show that, right?
I agree. Maybe off one or two of them. Like, don't go overboard with it and
Right.
kill absolutely. Well, I guess they did kill everyone when the ship blew up at the end, but
Sure.
that was just quick cut to
Didn't Clyden and in this universe, Clyden and Topa are no longer alive.
Right.
Mockless was destroyed.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was sad because Bortus didn't know.
No.
And that, I mean, if you want to talk about stakes,
Uh-huh.
our favorite character is just having his heart broken all the time by his family.
Right.
'Cause
Yeah,
he-
that's true.
When you think about it, he, what is he says to them that they have like they fled successfully, and then I think it's Malloy that says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mockless was destroyed."
Mm-hmm.
So that was
Yeah, it was
kinda
sad because like he said that Bortus said that the idea of rejoining Clyden and Topa on board
That's it.
on Mockless was the only thing keeping him going.
that's it. Yeah,
But
at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean,
right.
What a great idea.
0 cigarettes.
It was a great. There was the one thing that I had like a little minor quibble about though. That the shuttle, it was like gonna get crushed like an egg on its way down there, and then they find the Orville just kind of hanging out like it's not a thing. I know it's a shuttle and it's a ship,
Right.
but
Well, that's what I mean. It's like they could have gone a little bit more like, what if most of the ship was destroyed except for like one little part that could resist the something, or like an escape pod or something, where because it basically just looked like the regular Orville but just underwater. At least if like the lights were destroyed or part of it was destroyed or I don't know what, but yeah, it's like we needed more cues that this was a really bad timeline.
and it's like since they were trying to fit it all into one episode, yeah, you don't have to worry about that too much. Like, what are they going to do? If this was a multi-episode story arc, then they'd be able to explore that sort of thing. But I don't know. It's just it's always a bit of an irritation whenever you find like a derelict ship that's been in some crazy battle and it's been abandoned, and then they get it working in 20 minutes.
Of course.
Like, well, why was it abandoned in the first place if you just needed 20 minutes to fix it?
Right.
And you
Yeah.
managed to fix it while you're on the bottom of the ocean too. Like, how bad could it have been? And Star Trek's guilty of that too. That happens all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, you couldn't tell that they're in dire straits with all the brown clothing and like, you know, Kelly's shirt was obviously too small. Boobs are out the whole episode. So they're obviously in need and in crisis.
I guess, yeah, it's like they could have gone crazy, right? Like they could have just been completely different hair. They could have acted like, you know, you mentioned Mad Max. What if it was more? Because the funny thing about the Mad Max movies, Ian, are you familiar with the Mad Max movies?
I saw the most recent one.
Okay.
I don't think that at least not, being old enough to remember if I saw it. It was like on television in the background. But I did see the most recent. Didn't really enjoy it, to be honest.
I love, it's one of my favorite movies, but
Really?
they're all good. But the interesting thing about when you go back and watch them is that the first Mad Max technically was supposed to take place in our present, but then they were like, you know what? We don't really have a budget. So basically they said, you know what? How about let's just say, it's a few years in the future. But then the second movie, they came up with the idea of doing it in like sort of a post-apocalyptic thing. So the first one is not post-apocalyptic. So everyone looks slightly different than we do now, but without enough money to really show it. The second one is where they went crazy with the shoulder pads and like the punk rock look and all that. But really, it was only a few years after the apocalypse. So it would have been nice in this show to say, okay, well, it's been 7 years since the timeline went crazy, and just to show in 7 years how different it would be, you know?
Although it's been, it's been 7 years since the timeline went crazy, but it's only been, I think it was like 7 or 8 months since the Kalon attack. So things would have been that different. I mean, I don't know if Bortus has even had to pee since then.
No.
Yeah, good point. But anyway, like you said, they could eventually revisit this timeline, so we don't know, right? And then based on the preview of season 3, episode 1, we don't know what they're doing because things look pretty wacky in that preview that we've seen, right?
I haven't seen the preview.
Really? Well, maybe you shouldn't.
Nope.
Maybe you shouldn't. I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, you might as well avoid it. Might as well just go in cold, right?
Yeah, I probably will. I probably
right.
will.
Well, we are going to be reviewing that episode soon after it comes out, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very soon.
Yes, very soon. But I believe that's all we have to say about this episode, unless you guys have anything else to add.
I don't know. What else in this episode stood out to me? I liked the little Return of the Jedi nod with with Yaphet kind of peeking out through that little door.
Yes.
And then I got a chuckle out of that line too, that he didn't remember John right away because part of him was shot off and that contained some of his memories.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Oh.
But there were a lot of little nods and winks to Star Wars and Star Trek in this episode, which I enjoyed. Like a lot of the flying through asteroids.
Yes.
It's reminiscent
I absolutely
of,
thought of that. In fact, I believe somewhere in my research of reading one page, I found that Seth MacFarlane basically said that in this universe, the what if is basically what if the Orville was in the Star Wars universe. Like this was like the Star Wars version of the Orville, and I think it totally comes across. Especially,
the action was very reminiscent, and they did a good job of it.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember complaining about a previous episode. I forget which one it was. It might have been the Kalon battle episode where it's like there's too much going on. Excuse me, there's too much going on. I can't follow who's shooting at whom. But this was the action it seemed more intense but more manageable.
Well, and also I always go back to the Empire Strikes Back asteroid scene because the asteroids look so real, right? They look like you can touch them, whereas the asteroids in Attack of the Clones look like CGI asteroids. The asteroids in this episode look great.
Yeah,
like when
the
flying,
effects were top notch in this episode.
Right, absolutely. They looked amazing.
And it was chilling too to see the Earth in the state that it was in, with enormous craters on its land masses and no vegetation whatsoever, just rocks and water.
Yep.
All brown. Now that you say Star Wars, Star Trek in a Star Wars universe, it makes sense. All of the costume choices make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, very fun premise, very good episode. Good to see Catan again. I loved it, and I'm looking forward to season 3. We shall see if they revisit this timeline again.
Hope they do.
Yeah, and so I guess that wraps up this episode. We review every episode of the Orville, and pretty soon we'll be releasing episodes probably within a week of when the new episodes come out. So be sure to join us for season 3. You can find every episode of MORE-VILLE Orville on www.comicbooksyndicate.com or on YouTube or on Facebook or on Twitter, Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. So I want to thank G.I. Jolie and Champion for joining me.
Thank you.
You are welcome, and thank you.
Until next time, there's more where that came from.